الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Our series of discussions have gone into its final stage. It's fitting that tonight marks the development of our journey has taken us 2 nights. I'd again like to thank the Muhammadi Trust for having organized these lectures, which allowed me in fact to research and develop after many years. I know that the topic has been very difficult, but what makes it easier is that we're not going live today like we were last week, which I didn't actually know. But nevertheless, having gone live, there were many scholars who said that it was too deep for the normal person to digest, so it's been suggested to tone it down. But nevertheless, because we're not live, I don't need to really tone it down too much, but what I did compromise with them was that I'll explain all the concepts. So I think we agreed on that to continue with this discussion. I want to start off really where we left off last week, and just to very briefly recap. Today's topic is such that it shakes my soul when I realize the reality of this personality. Imam alayhi salam said very famously, says that we are the hujjat of Allah on the people, hujjat of Allah on the earth, in fact hujjat of Allah on creation. They are the soul of the creation, they are the soul of the universe. Alam al-Kawn, everything which is in being, they are the soul of that, they are the secret of all of creation. Allah created them from the haqiqat al-Muhammadiyah, from that spark, the first hijab. And that hijab's manifestation is what you see in all of the realities of creation. From the lowest reality of multiplicity to the highest reality of unity. Everything which is because of that substance, because of that movement. The Imam therefore is the manifestation of the light of the Prophet. And the Prophet is the manifestation of that primordial entity which is known as the Muhammadan reality, which we call the Haqiqat al-Muhammadiyah. That is the first within creation. Allah called it Muhammad because only He can praise it to the extent that He named it. No human being essentially can be Muhammad unless through the lutf of Allah, through the grace of Allah. So through this name, through this praise, He created all of the universe in front of Him. From the angelic realms, from the metaphysical realities, to the lowest levels of reality, which is the physical world. In this world, He put the hujjah, the proof of Allah. And through that proof, all of creation moves and rotates. In the same way that your body requires a soul for movement, your survival is based upon the soul. The reality of the soul is that you live on. Even when the physical body perishes, your reality stays on. In the same way, the reality of all of the universe continues to live even after perishing because of the hujjah of Allah, because of the proof of Allah. But that thing that balances the proof of Allah, and that thing which is the hujjah upon the hujjah, is none other than what we're going to discuss today, or who that personality, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. Her reality is such that within a tradition within Bihar is mentioned, says that from the light of the Prophet the Arsh was created. From the light of Amir al-Mu'mineen the angels were created. But from the light of Fatima the 7 heavens were created, heavens and earth. And in this way, from this reality, it's important that we start off. Haqiqat al-Muhammadiyah, therefore manifested within prophecy, is the final prophet. Haqiqat al-Muhammadiyah manifested in the state of the divine guides is Amir al-Mu'mineen. Last week we looked at the reality of wilaya, that without wilaya, none of us will go to heaven. Without wilaya, there is no heaven. Wilaya is that thing that takes us towards a creator. Our rank within heaven is based upon our intensity of understanding of the wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And our discussion was quite vast. But today there's a far deeper reality, in a sense, which we have to go deep inside of wilaya. The secret within wilaya Zahra. The secret within the Imams al-Zahra. The prophets being appointed prophets in Alam al-Dhars is because of Zahra. The prophet of God's reality coming into existence is because of Zahra. Why? Because if you go back to the very first entity, you realize that the highest level of existence is the Arsh of Allah. The Arsh of Allah contains all of the realities from Madda, from the physical world, all the way up to Alam al-Mawara. Everything which is contained is found within the Arsh. All of information and all of knowledge. From the Arsh comes the Quran. Why? Because the manifestation of the Arsh on the physical world is within that book form. That book is a guide, but only for those people with wilaya. Because the nur that the Quran talks about is the nur of the Ahl-ul-Bayt. This is why the Ahl-ul-Bayt, wherever they come and their sayings are so powerful, that it's sufficient for a person to go from dhulumat ila nur, the power of the Ahl-ul-Bayt. Quran in and of itself is light, but Quran's light is specific only for those people who see through the lens of wilaya. Amir al-Mu'mineen, nevertheless, is that reality that anyone who comes close to it converts to the way of Amir al-Mu'mineen, understands the reality of Amir al-Mu'mineen, if Amir al-Mu'mineen decides to show himself. Quran, for many people, the Quran itself says, for many people it misguides them, for many people it guides them. Guidance has a criteria, and that criteria is the criteria of the wilaya. Wilaya is like a light. We looked at it last week. When Allah favors someone, what does He do? He puts a dot of light within their heart, and that heart moves, because the heart is the haram of Allah. The heart is the sanctity of God. The light moves towards union with the divine light, and that movement is instigated because of that wilaya inside of you. Wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen, therefore, is manifested in your love for Sayyid al-Shuhada. The tradition last week, that person who Allah likes, wishes khair for, what does He do? He gives him love of Hussein and love of the ziyarah of Hussein. And when He wants to remove that, what does He do? He turns someone far away. He takes away the love of Hussein, diminishes that light, and takes away the love of that ziyarah. As long as you have that yearning towards Sayyid al-Shuhada. Why? Because of this tradition it says a person doing ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada, knowing the ma'rif of Sayyid al-Shuhada, has done the ziyarah of the Arsh of Allah. What is the Arsh of Allah? The Arsh of Allah is the reality of all of creation. The Arsh of Allah represents the dominion of Allah, is the Jalal of Allah. It is the nur of the light of the Prophet that created the Arsh of Allah. With that Arsh, the tradition now goes, says when the angels looked up towards the Arsh, they saw a lantern on the Arsh. And this language is for us to understand, but in those realms, in that metaphysical reality, what is lantern? Lantern is that thing which guides. When they looked towards the Arsh for guidance, the tradition says they went into prostration and they said, Allah, this light is blinding us. Those angels which are in alam al-aqul, those angels which are pure intellect and their reality is pure light. That light is saying that we're being blinded. At that moment, then Allah replies, He says that this is the light of Zahra which is shining to guide you. And at that moment the angels again prostrate. And from that time onwards then, this abundance, this new life is given to the angels. The angels are those that were made out of the dirt and the light of the wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen. On the one hand you have the angels, on the other hand you have the Arsh of Allah. But then the tradition continues and it says, had it not been for the pillars that uphold the Arsh, which are the seven heavens. What do those seven heavens represent? In another tradition, those seven heavens represent 70,000 veils of darkness and light. Those 70,000 veils were created from the nur of Zahra. This is one hadith al-Qudsi, it says, وَلَوْلَا فَاطِمَةً لِمَا خَلَقْتُكُمَا. Had it not been for Zahra, I would not have created the Prophet or Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the way that the discussion then goes, says, Ya Ahmad, لَوْلَاكَ لِمَا خَلَقْتُ الْأَفْلَاقِ. Ahmad, had it not been for you, I wouldn't have created creation, universe. And then he continues, had it not been for Ali, I wouldn't have created you. But had it not been for Zahra, I would not have created both of you. Why? Because the pillars of the Arsh that hold together all of existence is the seven heavens. And the seven heavens light comes from the light of Zahra. 7 levels. Why? Because the hijab are 7. Why are the hijabs 7? Had Allah not created 70,000 hijabs of light, hujab, of lightness and darkness, there would be no alam khilqat today. There wouldn't be no alam kawn today. The reason being is that for us to exist requires the intensity of light to be filtered, 70,000 layers. The filter that Allah used to create all of creation to where it was Zahra. Had the arsh not been there, creation wouldn't be there. But had those hijabs not been there, you would have found the arsh wouldn't be there. At that point Allah says, had it not been for Zahra, I would not have created both of you. There are 3 things in creation therefore. One is the wilaya of al-Mu'mineen that makes man perfect. The other one is the divine realities of all of creation. The arsh of Allah which is manifest within the Prophet. And what keeps all of those things together is the wilaya of Zahra, is the light of Zahra. Why? Because Zahra is the greatest sign of Allah. The angels say she's Rahmatullah al-Kubra. She's that light. She's the greatest mercy of Allah on the angels and all of creation. Allah created this entire universe upon His mercy. Why does He create for? What's the purpose of creation? Because of mercy, because He wants to reciprocate that. When He was Ghaib al-Ghayyub, there is nothing there. But on the basis of the first manifestation of Allah, فَأَحْبَبْتُ أَنْ أَعْرَفْ, He loved to be known, created. That first instinct of creation created the divine names. The greatest name within creation was Rahman. Why? Because all of those names go back to Rahman. Why? Because Rahman needs to be reciprocated. Allah reciprocated, bil-fa'il, came into action when He created all of creation. That rahmah that Allah used to create creation and to uphold creation, the foundations were manifest in the light of Zahra. And from then onwards you found that the entire universe was then created. It goes deeper than that. For every level of reality there is a manifestation on each level of reality. Rahmah of Allah started on the dot which was Haqiqat al-Muhammadiyya. From Haqiqat al-Muhammadiyya, as it goes through all of the levels of reality, it comes to the physical world. The physical world in itself is based on the rahmat of Allah. You human beings created as the perfect men with the potential to be the most perfect, to reach the highest realities, were created where? Think about it. Where did you come from? Before coming into the physical world, you were found in the wombs of your mothers. What is the womb of the mother? Rahm. The mercy of Allah, the rahmah of Allah, the first access of rahmah came from your mothers. Why? Because your mothers represent a reflection of the Haqiqat al-Zahra. Who is she therefore then? Go deeper and see. When Allah created the arsh, He created 2 realities. On the one hand, the first intellect, aql awwal, that contained all of the knowledge of creation. And on the one hand He created the universal soul, nafs kulli. That universal soul was the burden that bore life to all of creation. And this is why the first life that burden gave was to the arsh of Allah. For this reason the Prophet of God says, Fatima, you are my mother. The reason being is that through her gave life to the arsh. Had it not been for Fatima, there would not have been a reality, the first spark. Now when we look at this, it's not with an order. The fact of the matter is that reality, that alam-e-jam, is something that there's no time. Time in the physical world is a motion, it's a movement, it's speed, distance and time. But if you go deeper and you go to the highest levels, there is no reality there in terms of a movement of physical harakat that takes place. The reality of the highest levels is timeless. It's like they say within Taoism, the timeless present. There's no movement there because it's unity. Everything comes united onto that level. And we've looked at this within the last 2 lectures as well. The reality of time in and of itself. What is time? Time is a movement. Time is an accident, as they say in philosophy. Time is not essential, it's not a dhat. It's a creation of movement. That's why you have time. You remove the physics and what you find is time ceases to exist. When you go into your grave, right, you look at the stories which say that look, we've been sleeping here for 10,000 years and Isa raises a person up, but you've only been in the grave for 2 days. Why is that? Because of no physical matter. The reality of the grave is this. In this world you have 2 things. You have form and you have matter. When you remove the matter, so you have form and matter. Had there not been form, we'd all be a big blob. We've been given form to shape us. When you go into your grave, matter is removed. What is the best example? Is when you sleep. That's why they say sleep is close to death. The reason being is this, is the fact that when you sleep, you are mimicking barzakh. And when you mimic that, sometimes you feel like you've spent a year in your sleep, but when you wake up it's only been 10 minutes. 10 minutes, but you've seen an entire story. Why? There's no matter there. Highest levels is when form and matter is stripped, and when it's completely stripped, there's nothing then. What is it? Timeless, present. Even then there's two realities. One which is within the names and the attributes of Allah, which they call Dahr, and the highest level is Sarmad. Dahr is dependent upon the Dhat of Allah, but what the Dhat of Allah is nothing there, is timeless completely. So in this way there is a movement, therefore, it's a physical movement that takes place, and our physical movement becomes immaterial movement. From the moment that we're created to the moment that we die, we are moving towards immaterialism. Tajarrud, we're going towards separation from the physical world. Had a person been allowed to live their life in a normal way without being killed, according to our philosophers, they would have themselves departed. Their soul would have left, because they don't want to. You see many people. I remember my own grandmother, and I mentioned the story because 2 days ago she passed away. She used to pray for Malakul Maut to come. She said, son, I've lived my life, I want to move on now. And that philosophy of Mullah Sadra comes true, that the older you get, the more you found that there's a movement that takes place towards immaterialism. When your soul is ready to move on, the physical body then perishes, and that soul takes flight. Look at it and see, from the very small substance that you're created from, you're moving, and as you move, this is that existential philosophy that says that in the womb of your mothers, what happens when they say Allah blows the soul? Many philosophers have interpreted that as you move towards becoming immaterial at the age of 4 months inside of the womb of your mother. What happens is that your immaterialism creates a reality, and that reality becomes alive when you die. Ibn Sina says, he says the manifestation of your soul is the physical body. When that body begins to perish, the soul then climbs and goes back to its origin. The soul lives on. For as long as Allah is living, the soul is living. Why? Min amr Rabbi, it's the command of Allah. And so that movement is now taking place. What is Zahra therefore? She is that container that nourishes all of creation. She is that womb that houses the first intellect. On the one hand, the tradition says Amir al-Mu'mineen, Aql awwal, that entity that consists of all of the knowledge of creation from one end of eternity to the other end, and the other one, the life bearer of all of reality. This is why you found that these two are oceans. Both of them are oceans. Surah Rahman mentions this. There are two oceans that has a barzakh in the middle. Had it not been for the Prophet in the middle, both of these would have merged. And had these two oceans merged, you would have had chaos in the way that you wouldn't have understood your intellects would have fried. In this way, that barzakh is important. Why? Because it channels both of these realities. But if you look at it, the byproduct of these realities are two entities. One is Hassan, one is Hussein. The reality of Hussein is what? Look at it and see. This emphasizes this. What is the reality? Go into Mubahila, what do you see? Mutual cursing takes place. At the level of mutual cursing, verse of the Quran comes down. Your sons, your daughters, your nufus, your nafs. Look at the way that the Prophet is daqiq. Look at the way the Prophet is. You know, people say Prophet didn't leave behind a successor. When the verses of the Quran came down, the Prophet was so daqiq. The verses, you bring your sons, you know what the Prophet does? He's holding his sons at the front. Bring your women. Zahra was in the middle. Bring your nafs. Amir al-Mu'mineen was at the end. The tartib of the Quran, the Prophet followed to a T. In the tradition it says, in his arms was Hussein, walking was Hassan. I asked the question to the Prophet of God, Rasulullah, there's only 6 months difference between them or so. You tell me, what is the reality? You hold one in your arms and you make one walk on the floor. What is the difference? Ulama have replied to this. It says that the reason being Hussein was raised was because from the nasl of Hussein were coming 9 other imams. The Prophet of God wanted to emphasize that the hujjah is coming from this line, and so therefore he elevated this line. And as he began to walk, behind him was a secret, masked behind wilaya. On the one hand, Risalat, in the arms, the baqa of Islam, Hussein. On the one hand, Hassan. On the back, you notice Amir al-Mu'mineen is walking, but in the middle was Sirrullah. The greatest secret of Allah was walking, shaded in 7 veils. And as she walked, the tradition says Rasulullah puts his foot, and Zahra puts her foot, and Amir al-Mu'mineen puts his foot. Why? Because they didn't want this secret to get out anywhere. This secret was so powerful that the 6th commandment says, you want to understand the secret of my mother? You want to understand the secret of Zahra? It says the only way you can understand is this. Al-Layla hiya Fatima. Or as one of the traditions says, it says that this night is my mother Fatima. This night is Fatima. What is the reality of Fatima then? Laylatul Qadr. That night that houses the secrets of existence. Why? Because the angels ascend on that night. She is that formula. She's that reality that allows for the angels to descend. And this is why the 5th commandment said. He said that the house of Zahra is the house of prophecy where the prophet comes. The sky or the roof of that house is the arsh of Allah. The bottom is the arsh of Allah. The entire house is surrounded by the highest level of reality. And it's in this reality that the angels descend. So let me give you a tradition then to understand who this lady is when she comes into the physical world. Every prophet, they say, could not have become a prophet if that secret wasn't in their chest. And this is why the aid and the guide for every prophet has been the voice of Allah coming in their heart. The manifestation of the voice of Allah was Zahra. She rang in the hearts of the prophets to guide them. When Adam was looking for the kalimat, what happened? It guided him. There was a reflection in his heart. And this is why Allama Mustanbit says, he says in Al-Qatra, he says that one day Adam was walking with Eve, and as he began to walk, he saw the manifestation of a woman there. And he looks up and he sees this light is great. Light is blinding. Allah, who is this? And as he looks, he sees that there's a woman standing there. She has 2 earrings and a crown and a choker. And at that moment, Allah inspires him, says that crown is Rasulullah. That choker is Amir al-Mu'mineen. Those 2 earrings are her 2 sons. That woman who's walking is the secret of Allah. If you can understand that secret, you can understand all of creation. Had we understood that secret, we would have been from the arsh of Allah, would have gone beyond that. What is beyond the arsh of Allah? Only the Ahl-ul-Bayt know. The final hijab that separates us from Allah, its secret lies in the chest of Zahra. That's a reality. She is Laylatul Qadr. Why? Because the Qadr of Allah is housed within her. What is the Qadr of Allah? What is Qadr? Approximation of all of creation. You have Qadha, you have Qadr. For every formula that will take place, you see, Qadr of Allah is like formula, causation, causality. One thing leads to another. All of the multiple causalities in creation and movement, cause and effect. I'm speaking, is going into the microphone, is going into the speakers. That is a causal effect. That reality is found on Laylatul Qadr. The reality of humanity is found on Laylatul Qadr. Your next year is planned in Laylatul Qadr. What is Laylatul Qadr then? Laylatul Qadr, to be Laylatul Qadr, requires a burden. And that burden requires the absolute voltage, which is the mercy, Rahmatullah. And Rahmatullah requires Zahra. When it says the Quran was revealed on the Prophet's chest, why? Rahmat lil Alameen. Look at it this way. Allah, when He favored a Prophet, He gave them a successor. Sheath for Adam, Sam for Nuh, Ismail and Ishaq for Ibrahim. 124,000 odd prophets, ni'mah upon ni'mah upon ni'mah, until the final prophet comes. That prophet who's the reality of 124,000 prophets. When that prophet came, Allah says what? He's given ni'mah to all of the prophets. He says, but you're rahmatul lil alameen, and therefore I'll give you a mercy which is parallel to the fact that you're rahmatul lil alameen. What did He give him? Gave him a daughter. In our tradition it says daughter is rahmah, son is ni'mah. Gave him a daughter. That daughter became the rahmah of rahmatul lil alameen, to the extent that the Prophet of God would say, Fatima, you are my mother. Your reality is that reality of my mother. Hence he would stand up when she walked through the door. This isn't just the Prophet standing up. This is all of existence and its reality standing up to Zahra walking in. She's the mizan that balances this world. Her existence when she came into the physical world balanced all of creation. She's that mizan. She's that hujjah that balances everything. Had it not been for her, Ahl-ul-Bayt wouldn't have been complete. Had it not been for her, Imamat wouldn't have been complete. Had it not been for her, prophecy wouldn't have been complete. It is her nur which is reflected in the hearts of all of the Imams. And the sir inside of the heart of the 12th Imam is Zahra. The connection between her and her grandson is this, that when she was coming back from the court, the tradition says, as she began to walk back in one tradition, or in another tradition it says, that as she was pressed between the wall and the door, the first person that she called for wasn't her husband, wasn't her father. At that moment when her ribs were being broken, she cried and she said, son Mehdi, come and help me. That's the reality, and that's the connection between the Hujjah, who is now, and his grandmother. So therefore, if you look at a reality, what is it? And I'm going to give you a tradition, and I'm going to explain this tradition. I don't want to overcomplicate our discussion, but we'll go into one tradition. And that tradition is this. Honestly, when people say Islam and women, the greatest sir of Allah, the greatest isma, the greatest infallible is Zahra. The greatest pair that's been created is Amir al-Mu'minin and Zahra. These two are realities which are embedded. The secret of Imam is Zahra. There's no higher maqam of a woman than the maqam of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. Today you look at Islam and see there would be no Islam, there would be no creation, there would be no prophet had it not been for his daughter, because she took the burdens of the arsh, and there is no perfection without understanding her reality. So this is where the tradition then starts off from. We find it in all of our books. Sunnis and Shias have narrated both of this. Tradition goes like this. The Prophet of God is instructed, says go, where? 40 days retreat. Arba'in, go for it. Go meditate for 40 days. In the same way as Musa meditated. In the tradition it says Moses went for 30 days. 10 days were increased to make it 40 days, from 30 to 40. The last 10 days were testing. In a tradition it was said that in those 10 days he was taught the ma'rifah of Sayyid al-Shuhada. So he cried for 10 days connecting with Sayyid al-Shuhada, that when he came back more perfect than he left. In this way the Prophet of God is instructed. Musa was every prophet has done Arba'in. Every prophet has gone through 40 days. Ibrahim went for 40 days. Adam went for 40 days. Yusuf went for 40 days. Every prophet goes for spiritual development. They were sent to a mountain. They were sent far away from their nation. When the Prophet of God was told, go for 40 days, where was the Prophet instructed to go? Look at the tradition. The Prophet of God was said, go to the house of Fatima bint Asad, go inside of the house for 40 days and don't leave it within those 40 days. Question is asked, why the house of Fatima? Because there was one existent there, who was 30 years younger than him, and that was Amir al-Mu'minin, who was within this house. Go to that house. Wasn't told to go to the mountains. Says go into the house. He goes into the house. Says separate from your wife for 40 days. Separated. He goes there. You know the tradition says? The tradition says he's sitting in his room. 40 days have gone. On the 40th day he sees Jibreel descending. As Jibreel descends, he has a plate in his hand. The plate is covered. He brings it and he says, Rasulullah, Allah gives his salam and he presents you with a present. Both salam and present? Salam is no present. In the tradition it says Jibreel says that Allah sent you a present. Mikael comes down and he brings the plate. Why did Mikael come down? There are 4 angels that uphold alam al-wujud. All of existence is held by 4 angels. Jibreel, Mikael, Israel, Israfil. And these 4 angels are represented as follows. One is the manifestation of Ar-Rahman, one Ar-Rahim, one Alhamdulillah, and one Maliki Yawmiddin. 4 angels manifest these 4 qualities, which you, when you go into your Quran, when you open it up, the first chapter is represented with these 4 statements. These 4 angels are manifest of these, hence they hold up all of existence. Here the Prophet of God is told, Mikael is coming, Israfil is coming, Israel is coming. Why? When he opens it, he sees that there's fruit there. Eat from that fruit. What was on it according to a tradition? It was that fruit which was forbidden for Adam, one tradition says. That fruit was brought. Why? It was haram upon Adam, not in the legalistic sense. It was haram upon creation because that was reserved for the one who could uphold it. Who was it? The Prophet of God. Why? Because there's an entity, there's a reality there. 4 angels come down, guardian angels of creation come down. For what purpose? Prophet knows there's something big about to happen. As he eats, one angel comes, Israfil comes, he says, Rasulullah, put your hands out so we can clean your hands. One angel takes the water back to the Arsh of Allah. As these 4 prophets, or as these 4 angels are there, Jibreel then instructs the Prophet. He says, Allah instructs you, do not pray now. It is prohibited upon you to pray. Why? Because Rasulullah will pray. Imagine this. Has any prophet ever been prohibited? He says, no. Your priority now is to go to the house of Khadija. Directly go to until you do not pass that light into Khadija, you're not allowed to pray. The tradition says the Prophet of God gets up and he goes towards the house, having been cleansed for 40 days. That manifestation in the physical world as well. As you know, before you want to try for children, it's mustahab for you to fast for 40 days. But the highest level is the level of the Prophet. The Prophet was pure. He didn't need to fast. The Prophet is light. The Prophet is the first reality. The Prophet is the Haqiqat al-Muhammadiyya. He doesn't need to do anything. But here the Prophet of God has been instructed, fast for 40 days. After fasting, Jibreel comes, gives him fruit. What are these fruit? This is the fruit of life from the tree of life. From that level. This is why in the tradition it says when Adam was created, from the seeds of Adam, from the back of Adam, all of his seeds were shown. It says, this is all of your children, bar one child. It says, the only person who can bear this child is Rasulullah. From the seed of Rasulullah, Zahra was brought out. Otherwise, everything else was brought out of the seeds of Adam. At that moment, he goes to the house of Khadija. As he knocks on the door, she says, who is it? He says, I'm your husband, Muhammad. She opens the door. She says, I've been yearning for you. I've been praying for you. I've been praying to meet you again. At that moment, she says, shall I bring you water to do ablution so you can pray? He says, at this moment, Allah has asked for something else. The tradition then goes forward. Says that the Prophet of God then does not move from the house of Khadija until Khadija herself says, now I can feel the light of Zahra within my belly. And at that moment, he says, now the light has been transferred. In this way, when that light was transferred, the tradition says this. It says that she begins to, when Quraysh left her, she begins to converse with her stomach and the baby inside. And it says that that child inside of her stomach gives her the support, the moral support and the light. She's illuminated now. As she begins to walk, she's illuminated with realities. The child talks to her. The child converses with her. The child teaches her. And it says in the tradition that just before Zahra comes into the physical world, it says that when all of Quraysh has left, they've all left her, they've said, in the tradition it says, leave your husband, otherwise we'll leave you. It says the one thing I'm not going to do is leave my husband. Tradition says at that moment, 4 women come. 4 women, 4 lights come. One of them was a sister of Ibrahim. One of them was the wife of the Pharaoh. One of them was Maryam, Khadija's herself. And at the same time the tradition then says one was Ibrahim's, one was Musa's mother, one was Pharaoh's wife. When all 4 of them come together, at that moment then they say, there's no need to worry. We've been told to come and help you because we are the servants of that which is inside of your womb. Servants of them. It's because of her that we are where we are today. And at that moment the tradition says this. When she comes into the physical world, she goes into sajda. That sajda is the greatest sajda within the history of creation. And when she prostrates in sajda, Ahl Makkah come to the Prophet and say, we see so much nur that's shining all over the world. What is that? And at that moment the reply then comes, it is my daughter who's gone into sajda. She's born and that light is illuminating all of creation. All of the people of the Arsh, from the metaphysical reality to the physical world, felt that light. And this is one in tradition it says that one day at Fajr time, Ahl Makkah come and knock on the door of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They ask him, they said, what is this? There's a yellow light which is shining at the time of Fajr that comes from your house. What's the problem? At that moment, Amir al-Mu'mineen replies, he says, it's my wife when she stands up in front of her Creator in the morning. When her face goes yellow, the light is illuminated. It illuminates our house. It illuminates the arsh of Allah. But today Allah wanted to show the world what she is about, so He allowed for this light to illuminate all of the world around you. It says at the time of al-Zahra, the tradition says, it says that there was a red light which illuminated the city. And at that moment, people come to the Prophet of God. They said, why is this red light illuminating? He replies and he says, go to the house of Ali, and the answer lies there. They go to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They knock on the door. He comes and says, what's up? He says, there's a light, a red light which is illuminating. He says that yes, when my wife stands for prayer and her face goes red out of fear of Allah, that nur is reflected in such a way that the arsh of Allah, entire house is filled. It's a lutf of Allah that He's decided to put it all over the world. And finally at the time of Maghrib they say a white light illuminates. And in the same way people then come to the Prophet of God, and again the Prophet of God instructs them, go to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And at that moment then, as they go to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, as the door is then opened up, Imam says, it's the lutf of Allah. My wife is illumination, everything from A to Z, everything, her reality is light, which is veiled upon veils upon veils. Nighttime, as we said 2 weeks ago, is Tawheed. Daytime is multiplicity. Yawm al-Qiyamah is the day when everything is open to you. Laylatul Qadr is the night of secrets. Allah says, Qum al-Layl, stand up at night time and worship me. Why? Because I give secrets at night time, not in the daytime. Yawm al-Qiyamah, everything comes in front of you, your hisab is done, books are closed. But at night time is when we give secrets. The reality of night is because it's veiled, and the reality of Zahra is because she's veiled. Kaaba is veiled from the manifestation of Zahra is the Kaaba. Kaaba is veiled. And in the same way, Quran is veiled. The reality, the sir of the Quran is Zahra. So in this way, if today our women or even if our men are trying to observe hijab, it's a manifestation from the reality of Zahra. We need to uphold that, because that reality, if we were to understand it in full pleasure, even at the moment, why is it today the enemy, the first thing the enemy attacks is not the brothers, it's the hijab of your women. And whenever the enemy attacks something, understand that that is the most detrimental thing to your enemy, is because that hijab can bring down entire civilizations, can bring down entire empires. One lady in Sham with shackles decides to lift her shackles, and as she walks into the court of Yazid, she gives one of the most blistering speeches within all of creation that brings down an entire empire. That is the power of a woman who understands the true value of hijab. And this is why the enemy has always been scared. This is why when Ahl-ul-Bayt had ever been in problems, Rasulullah would not have been Islam today had it not been for Khadija. And the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen had it not been for Zahra. Where do you see this? When Amir al-Mu'mineen's sword stopped, Zahra's tongue then begins when she gives that khutbah fadaqiyah. And as she begins, she talks of a deep philosophy that no one can answer. She stands for the rights of her husband in such a way that until the day of judgment, people know what is haqq and what is batil. And in the same way, when the warith of all of the Anbiya is killed in Karbala, the entire foundations of the message of Islam survives because of one woman. The reality of Ahl-ul-Bayt and Imamat has survived because of women. And this is why Ma'suma Qum says, she says, me Fatima heard from my aunt Fatima, who heard from her 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 grandmother Fatima. It was all the way up. What does it say? It says this. It says that on the arsh of Allah is written about the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And there is no tradition far greater. It says this kalima of La ilaha illallah, says Allah says, this is my fortress. And whoever enters that fortress, amana min adabi, secure from my torment. But then he says that the Imam is the shara't and the shurut, the criteria for this wilayah, the criteria for tawheed. If you don't understand the criteria, you will never be able to come into the fortress of tawheed. That fortress was explained to humanity by one lady as she stands there. Look through the eyes of wilayah next time you read that khutbah of Fadaqiyah. Go home today, look through the lens of wilayah, and you will see another dimension to the reality of what that actual khutbah is about. She didn't go just because of the fact of going. The way that she talks, the methodology which she uses to break down the enemies around her was amazing. The way that she did it. It told us, Dhul Fiqar, yes, has a benefit, but Dhul Fiqar is not a person. Tradition or traditions is the mechanism of defense of the Imam. And people say when the 12th Imam comes, how's it possible he's going to fight with a sword? Dhul Fiqar is not a sword, it's the defense mechanism of the Imam. Hence, when Amir al-Mu'mineen's sword had come to a stop, there was one reality that promoted that. Today our biggest argument to the fact that we are correct is Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. She's that one entity that defended wilayah. If someone was to ask today, what is succession? Succession means this. Sunni and Shia, both of us have said that that person who dies without giving bay'ah, knowing the Imam of their time, mata mitad in Jahiliyyah. Can you produce one tradition that says Fatima al-Zahra gave allegiance to anyone but Amir al-Mu'mineen? Within all of the traditions of Ahl-Sunnah, it says Banu Hashim did not give allegiance to the first Khalifa as long as she was alive. What establishes? Sahih Muslim then says, it says this, that there are two people who claim Khilafat. One of them is to hell. One of them, the tradition says wajib al-qatl, and the other one, this is Sahih Muslim, this is not our traditions. One of them is wajib al-qatl, the other one's the Imam of the time. Other one's the Hujjat of Allah, other one is the Khalifa of Allah. Question is this, who does Zahra give allegiance to? There's no tradition, even a lie in history from the hundreds of thousands of traditions which we have that says she gave allegiance to anyone but Amir al-Mu'mineen. But my discussion is not on history, and my discussion is not a theological discussion. The reason why I mention this is for this purpose. She is the mizan. She is that scale that brings truth and falsehood. She is the objective reality of Allah. She is the truth. She is the manifestation of haqq, and haqq is only but Allah. She is the secret of truth. She's sirrullah. She's the guide. She's the nurturer. One Quran was revealed on the night of Qadr, and that night became known as Laylatul Qadr. Why is Laylatul Qadr? Why is Ramadan the best of all months? Because of Laylatul Qadr. Why is Laylatul Qadr the best night that exalted Ramadan? Because the Quran was revealed. What is the reality of the Quran? One Quran was revealed. Ramadan becomes Ramadan. Zahra is that person who gave birth to 11 Quran and Atiqs. One after another, light upon light upon light. Amir al-Mu'mineen says in the Battle of Siffin, says that these Qurans which have been raised between two sheets, Ana Quran and Atiq. Manifestation of the Quran is here. Why? Actualization of the word of God, Kalamullah, is the whole of Kalamullah is what? Amir al-Mu'mineen. One Quran. Zahra, from her reality comes 11 Qurans. And that's a reality that needs to be understood. So in this way, we as the followers of this grand lady need to understand her reality. We need to sit down and see what is it. The mizan is there. Anyone who goes against her perishes. Anyone who comes towards her safeguarded. But there's a lot of things that I wanted to say. I've got a lot of things that we needed to discuss. My time is slowly coming to an end, and the last 2 weeks have been fascinating with your questions. But I'm just going to mention one last portion, and I think that portion is important. And the portion goes as follows. A person comes to the house of Zahra, knocks on the door. I've narrated this many times, it's online as well. I've narrated this online, but I'm going to narrate it now. Look at it from this light that we've been discussing for 47 minutes like this. Person comes, Rasulullah is out of Medina. Now when he's out of Medina, he leaves his daughter in charge. Fiqh and all the ahkam in the hands of his daughter. Which religion in the world made a governor in those days? And maybe later on, yes. But in those days, Prophet leaves his daughter. There's no other religion in creation that's done that. Why? Because the Prophet understood who the greatest was, who's Ahl. So the Prophet does. If he chooses his daughter when he goes out, or if he chooses Amir al-Mu'mineen to deliver verses, sometimes it begs to ask the question, would the Prophet of God not establish succession? But anyhow, knock on the door comes. She opens the door. There's a woman on the door. The woman says that my husband has said to me he's got a question. Okay, what's the question? Says we've heard in a tradition that the Shi'a of Fatima are those that hell is haram upon. Even if they go to hell, hell won't burn them. Hell becomes heaven. What is the criteria for the Shi'a of Fatima? And at that moment she calls them and says there are 4 criteria. Let me tell you those criteria. Number 1, tawalla. Number 2, tabarra. Distance yourself from the people we don't like and love those people that we like. You know what that means? That means anyone who claims to be the Shi'a of Ahl-ul-Bayt, remove hatred from your heart for them. Why? Because she says love those people we love. Ahl-ul-Bayt love their Shi'a. Do you know what the tradition says? There are 100 parts of Rahmah of Allah. One of those has been given to your mothers and all of creation, in fact, in the physical world. You fall down, you see your mother comes running to aid you. There's a parable that the Bani Israel narrate. This is from their books, so I'm going to narrate this. It's interesting. It says that one of their members became or fell in love with this girl. He comes to her and says, I want to marry you. And they started seeing each other. After that, she says to him, she goes, I can see that you're very much attached to your mother. I can't tolerate that you love somebody else but me. She says to him, cut your mother's heart out and bring it to me. Says at night time, Bani Israel narrate this in a parable. This woman was very pious. At night time he comes, takes a knife, cuts the heart of his mother out, and as he takes the heart in his hands, he trips and he falls over. As he falls over, from the body of the mother comes, son, are you okay? That's a mother. 1 part, 99 in the Allah. Who is Zahra? Manifestation of that. She loves all of her followers. Let it not be that you have hatred in your heart for anyone. You're up, nighttime you're praying. You pray for everyone. Why don't you take care of yourself? She replies, it's the haqq of the people. Haqq of the peoples. That woman who prays for other people before her own children. You know what the Ummah did to her? 2 weeks time you'll see this. Ummah broke her ribs. No, Ummah broke her back. You know what it means by breaking someone's back? They destroyed her. That's what the Ummah did. That lady would stand there at night time praying for that person, for that person, for that everyone. That lady who says that after the Prophet died, Jibreel would come and comfort her, and she would write, Amir al-Mu'mineen would write all of the events that are going to take place upon a Shia. Do you think that you're not the dua of Zahra? She prayed for all of you in this room and everyone else. You know what she prayed? She prayed for you that Allah would create a nation to cry over Hussein. If tears come into your eyes because of that Imam, it's because a mother prayed for you. That is the power of that mother when she prays. Nighttime she's standing there, she's praying. Imam Hassan's mother, look, praying all night, you become weak. You know the tradition says? It says, you know the Prophet, when he Surah Muzammil, look at Surah Muzammil, you know what it says? Rasulullah, stand up at night time, but a little bit, a little bit. Why? Adam was told, extend your prayers. Nuh was told, extend your prayers. Ibrahim was told, extend your prayers. Musa was told, extend your prayers. When it comes to the final Prophet, Allah says, rest, cut down your prayers. Why? Look at the tradition. The tradition says this: when Rasulullah would stand, a woman would stand behind her, and behind her were two children standing. As Rasulullah would go down into ruku and the whole night he would spend there, Zahra would say, what are we doing, Father, tonight? He says, today we are doing sajda, tonight we are doing sajda. Allah brings down a message, says that her feet swell up. I can't take it when her feet swell up standing at night time. Cut down your prayers so that her feet don't swell up, so that her son's feet don't swell up. Allah, mercy. Look at the mercy of Allah. And you think to yourself, who's the first people to cause pain? The only thing that gave Zahra physical happiness in this world, you know what the tradition says? So she's lying there, lifeless. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes. Tradition says he picks up her head, puts it in her lap. Tradition says he begins to cry. Tears begin to fall on the face of Zahra. She lifts up a small arm, she begins to rub her face. The tradition says Amir al-Mu'mineen begins to cry more. He says, Zahra, why do you rub my tears on your face for? No, the tradition says, it says, because I've heard from my father Rasulullah that when a madhloom person cries, those tears that come out, mustajab. So you know what she replied? She says, Ali, I don't know a person more madhloom than you. And then at that moment she begins to talk to him. She goes, Abul Hassan, do you remember when we got married? She's leaving this world. The only happiness? She says that you remember when Jibreel came down and said, Mahar, what do you want in your mahar? I remained quiet. Allah says, I'll give you the heavens and the earth. Says, I remained quiet. Says, I'll give you the seas and the oceans. I remained quiet. Jibreel then said, Allah asks you, what do you want? You know what she replied? She says, I want shafa of all of my nation. All of those people who are going to cry over my son Hussein, I want to intercede for them on the day of judgment. Says Ali, Allah sent a stone from heaven to seal the deal. Come and give it to me so that I can take it in my grave. That on the day of judgment I can stand up and I can look at all of creation and say, all of these people cried for my Hussein. I can take all of them, I can take him to heaven. See, that's her reality. Even at the last minute, she remembers that. Two things she remembers though. She remembered you at her last moments of her life, and she remembered one more person. You know that was? She says, when my son Abbas comes into the world, give him my salam. And I'm not here to recite a musibah, but you know what these names represent, and you know what this woman represents. She was somebody who was a madhluma. If you look at her history of life, we've looked at how great she was in terms of creation. But have you ever read history and seen? You know, as a child, all of the children would leave her, desert her, because she was the son of the Prophet, daughter of the Prophet. You know what it says in tradition? I'm just going to read 2 parts and that's it, we'll finish. It says that when Khadija passed away, Rasulullah went to Taif. When he was coming back from Taif, he was covered head to toe in blood. They stoned him. As he begins to come back, he remembers. He says that, look, I've got a daughter who's only 5 years old waiting for me in the house. Says, how am I going to go back? She's a yatima, her mother just died. If she sees me in blood, what's she going to say? The tradition says Fatima was waiting on the door. Daughters of Ahl-ul-Bayt wait for their fathers. Zainab was waiting for the door for Amir al-Mu'mineen. One 4-year-old girl in Karbala was waiting on the tent for her father to come back. Says that as she was waiting, Rasulullah with tears in his eyes, heavy-hearted, begins to walk to the doors thinking, what am I going to say? What the tradition says that this small girl comes forward, she sees her father. She doesn't let him realize though what's in her heart. In the tradition it says 4 or 5-year-old with small arms go around the knees of the Prophet. She says, Father, come down. Comes down. With her hand she wipes away his tears and she removes the blood from his face, and she says, don't think that because my mother isn't here, Fatima's not here. That, in the tradition it says, that's when the Prophet of God then said, Fatima, you are my mother. She took the burden of pain from the Prophet and she put it deep inside of herself. Today, if Islam is alive, it is because of her fruits that Islam is alive. But we're on the Muslims, and look what they did to her. They didn't leave a part of her body which was left without. Look at the tradition. Sometimes we don't even narrate this. We'll narrate this when Ayyam Fatimiyya comes, to see what all-out ambush means on the house, how they surrounded her and they beat her. It's in the traditions. And we'll narrate this, and there's no harm in narrating this. But nevertheless, if that person is Sirrullah, if that person who's 70,000 veils, and as we discussed, that person who upholds the Arsh of Allah, Alam al-Kawn rests upon Zahra, that reality that the angels prostrated towards, and when she left this world, Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he comes to the grave and puts her into the grave, he begins to scream, Rasulullah gave me her as an amana. Take your amana back, but be careful, her ribs are broken. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.